now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled Rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome and welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And this is Ben.
on Spoiled Rotten. And today, we are revisiting, that's easy for me to say, we are revisiting Planet Hulk, the 2010 animated feature. Man, who directed this? I feel like it's Sam Liu. Yeah.
Sam Liu
I feel
and
like
Frank
we've really,
Power.
we've really racked up a bunch of Sam Liu films on this podcast. So I'm really happy for him that he gets to hear us talk about his work. I wanted to do this because I had just recently been on Back Issue Bloodbath talking about the original comic version of this, and we've got some time before the new stuff comes out, so why not talk about the movie adaptation on this podcast?
Yeah, I'm very excited to hear what the differences are between the comic stuff and what we saw.
Yeah,
it's gonna be fun.
I was kind of hoping that you'd read it, not because it would make this episode better, just because I'm like, I'm gonna feel way more negative now that you haven't read it, but I'll feel like I'll be saying more negative things.
Hey, in all fairness, if I did read it, you can't rely on this memory to really process what happened, because what I have learned is when I have had the Marvel Unlimited app and all that kind of stuff, reading a ton of comic books, it's usually in a situation where I am heavily distracted by something else, like being on the TDC. So I'm not fully absorbing it. And when I am watching it at home, it's at the expense of something else. Like I usually have The Office on repeat in the background because I do a yearly rewatch and all that kind of stuff, because I find it really hard to give it my full attention. But that being said, it is a wonderful app to replace doom scrolling with. And I'm sad I don't have it anymore.
When you are using it, my go-to move is to listen to film scores. I think that helps take away the thing. So yeah. I read it while listening to the Thor Ragnarok score, which makes sense based on how much they took from this. But I didn't know that at the time. I just thought they were just taking visuals, not plot points. But yeah, I find that truly helps me focus on the comic by playing score, because there's no words, and it's cutting out some of the silence.
That is a move that I definitely do. Because now I've moved on to reading like books, currently trying to read 1984, and that is the move that I do. I have ambient background music, movie scores, and all that kind of stuff. Turns out I really like the Interstellar score, and
it's a great score.
It's a great score, and I got to rewatch that movie because I'm just like, all right, well, this is one of my lesser liked movies from Nolan, just because of the sound mixing.
I just don't find it interesting outside of an IMAX theater.
Yes, that is also my thing. I'm just like, I liked it in IMAX. Why don't I like it here? I'm like, because the allure of IMAX is gone.
I knew while watching it, I was like, nah, I'm not. I understand it's a good movie and it's some people's favorite of Nolan. But while I was watching it, I was very aware, this is not going to work outside of IMAX. And I have tried to rewatch it and I didn't finish.
Yeah, that's fair. It's just one of those things where Nolan movies demand my full attention, and I don't have an issue with that. But with comic books and all that kind of stuff, yes, I very much need an ambient noise or something in the background to really get me into that mood of understanding the words and getting them to pop off the page.
Before I talk about it, how do you feel this did? I know you haven't read it, but do you feel like this is this is probably what the comic is?
I don't think that's the case. I genuinely don't. I have like genuinely, I have watched this before in the past.
Oh, good.
So
Proper
this is an
revisit.
actual revisit for me, and I just, like you said, with Ragnarok, I'm like, yeah, I like the energy they brought to it a lot more, but that's largely because I'm like, yeah, that they didn't really do this justice. You know what I mean? That
No.
because of the movie rights with Universal.
Yeah,
and
they
all
were
that
like,
kind of
we're not doing a Hulk movie,
so
so
yeah,
just
they
enjoy
fit
this.
in. Yeah, they definitely fit in as much as they possibly could, and I'm like, okay, I still liked that energy a lot more just because Ragnarok was such a fun movie to me. But here, I'm just like, oh man, Korg really sucks. He's just really boring.
Interesting. Well, I agree in movie form. Um, as in this movie, not Ragnarok.
Right, right.
Yeah, I found for people who haven't read it or seen the movie, Planet Hulk is about Hulk being sent to a different planet by the Illuminati, and when he gets there, he's captured. It does actually help if you've seen Ragnarok first to just get the general beats of. It's mostly what happens to Thor, but it's happening to Hulk in terms of getting captured and then taken away by the Sicarian, like the Sicarian who is in control of the planet. And it is not a funny comic, so don't take that into it. It's definitely not that, but it is, heavily based in the gladiator arena. And he gets some friends. You may recognize some names like Korg and Meek, but they are not at all anything like they are in Ragnarok. So you kind of have to just let that go and not hold them accountable for that. And yeah, he kind of hates the Red King who's in control. There's no Grandmaster here. And he fights him and with his team destroys him. And that's where the movie ends. But that's not where the comic ends, and I found that to be a very odd choice.
See, that's one thing that I felt was that when I paused this movie, I distinctly thought to myself, because I needed to eat, I was like, I'm pausing it between the second and third act. This is a good pause point. And when I saw the time left on the movie, I was like, there's only 15 minutes left. This is not a good pause point between Act 2 and 3, but this is distinctly between Act 2 and 3. What is happening here? So I was just like, what got cut off? And then also the idea of like, because I know this is a DC thing, I'm like, my question to you was, did they have to like stick to a time limit of like
now I'm
the
thinking
90
it's
minutes?
just Sam Liu who's like, I would like to have it be under an hour and a half, please.
I don't like that idea if that's the case, but you're right. We have seen a lot of his stuff that just so happens to have that correlation.
At first, I did think it was DC animation. I'm like, well, that's not this case. So I don't know what the deal is. And maybe there's just in general, hey, look, if you're doing one of these straight to DVD things, we're not fucking with anything over 80 minutes.
So how does the comic extend beyond? Because it just ends, and then I'm just like, this is not very satisfying.
No, it's not. To be clear, the comic just ends, but in a way that made me be like, oh, now I have to read World War Hulk. Like, I need to know what happens next. Versus this, where I'm just like, so I'll say this: we will actually go through the movie. I am going to compare it to the comic, but I think the main difference here is I feel like this movie is trying to honor the idea that Hulk is this brute force that has to be reckoned with, and he can, through sheer might, just win all the time, which is very heavily weaved throughout the comic. But what I liked about the comic that is not present here in a meaningful way, and I understand that it's two different media, so obviously I'll feel a different way when I get to read and process information at my own pace versus at the pace of a movie. But it does feel like the fundamental change they made here, which makes it less of a faithful adaptation to me, is that the comic seems very interested in Hulk not understanding, but feeling so isolated, not because he's on an isolated planet, because he's like, what the fuck? Like, all my friends, like the Avengers and everything, they're constantly treating me like I'm some problem they have to get rid of, when I've saved the world just as many times as they have, but they've never come to me and like interact with me as a peer. They interact with me as this monster they have to get rid of. And then he goes to this other planet and he finds people who genuinely want to be around him, and he's like, I'm kind of fucking up their lives on what's going on here. So there feels like he's reckoning with how he's perceived and how he wants to be perceived. And this movie was kind of just like, no, he's just a hero, guys, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And I think the comic is also saying he's a hero, but it's also, it gives him room to be a bad influence. Like I in the comic, love Meek, and I just remember while reading it being like, well, I don't even know why they bothered calling that character Meek in the MCU. It's just, she doesn't even speak, one, but two, like, this is such a clearly defined character in the comic, not in the movie. Because spoiler alert, Meek is kind of the bad guy of the comic.
Oh.
I still haven't said what happens. I have still haven't said what happens at the end of the comic, and it's not stated in that comic run, but you find out basically next, in the next run, which is World War Hulk, that he did something bad. But yeah, you get to see these people bounce off of Hulk, and it does truly feel like they're forming a family in the comic. Like I said, maybe I feel differently because I'm reading it and processing it the way I'd like to versus the movie, and maybe you can say, yeah, it's there that they're a family. But this movie just felt like, oh yeah, it's just a bunch of people who are like, yeah, we're working with the Hulk, so we'll win. Versus the comic really pushing him to be like, I don't feel like the bad guy, but some of my actions are like Meek. Like, that's what's at stake, is like, Meek is this somewhat funny but more kind-hearted character who at one point Hulk is kind of like, oh, you can never let them forget that they wronged you, basically being like, you just keep hitting them until they die. And Meek is really like, I'm going with that, that's my life now. And he even like, he gets bigger and he starts getting respect from his group of people, because he's the runt at the beginning. And now it feels like I'm just talking about the comic, but I'm trying to illustrate the differences in how I don't feel like the movie couldn't incorporate these things. The fact that the movie left it out, it felt like, oh, I don't think you're actually engaging with what the original story was about, because you could change a bunch of things. I think we said this during Superman Red Sun or whatever, but you can change a bunch of things as long as you're trying to drive at the same point. But the changes made in this movie, like Superman Red Sun, feel like they're fundamentally losing the nuance and actual character work that's being done.
Yeah, because the issue I reckon with is that opening bit with the Illuminati, and where Iron Man's the only one talking and all that kind of stuff, they're pitting him out to be such a big problem, and then here it's like on this planet, I'm like, oh, he's in full control of everything. Like, why couldn't the Illuminati just talk to him and all that kind of stuff? Because he can articulate himself here, they can think, and yeah, they've got the whole like, oh, the language bot, nanobots and all that kind of stuff, and I'm like, sure, whatever. But at the end of the day, I'm just like, so this was not actually a problem. He was genuinely misunderstood. And to your point, Hulk has saved the planet so many times. Why is he all of a sudden a planet? Why is he all of a sudden an issue? And the one thing that sticks out in my mind for Iron Man, and this is consistent with Iron Man, is the idea that you cause so much destruction basically to property, and him being a capitalist. I'm like, yeah, that I think makes sense.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's actually Reed who says it in the comics.
Okay.
Like, the Illuminati are there, but I'm guessing, 2008 had an Iron Man movie.
Sure.
2010 has Iron Man 2. You lead with Iron Man, I guess. I don't know. But, so maybe that's a choice they made for the movie, but I don't think the movie is interested in something like that, like what you've just introduced in terms of the capitalists being like, well, you break too much property. I think they were just like, who's the popular guy right now?
Sure.
And it was Iron Man. Whereas it would have been nice if they went that route, like that you just said. And yeah, what I will say feels more realistic to me is the way that Hulk expresses himself in the movie. Because in the comics, I'm like, he kind of just reads like Ben Grimm. I don't feel like I'm reading the Hulk. And when I was on Back Issue Bloodbath, I was kind of asking Andrew, like, is that like normal? Like, is this how everyone always reads Hulk? He's like, it's just like depends on who's writing him, and this was done for the story in particular. I'm like, because it works. You feel like you understand where he's coming from better without it being Bruce Banner. But it does read like, well, this isn't the big grunt Hulk. They still do grunting in this and stuff. Where I, as the reader, was like, oh, he's not expressing himself like he does in the book. He has flashes of it, but in this, it's still kind of like, yeah, it's Hulk. He's just gonna smash things.
Yeah.
Versus the talking he does to himself, but to other characters in the comic.
Yeah. Because the thing that stood out to me was when he meets Beta Ray Bill, and he's just like going at him, and like the whole Coliseum is like, there's like an audible, like, you could hear the pin drop, and it's just him beating on Beta Ray Bill, and then I think it's Korg or one of his allies. And all
Korg
that
stops
stuff.
him. Yeah. He's
like, hey, that's enough. He's defeated. You don't have to go ahead and kill him. And I'm like, this feels weird for him to respond immediately, but also based on what Beta Ray Bill just said is like the idea of like, hey, one of us has got to go, and it ain't me. That's the rules of this whole Coliseum thing and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just like, it feels weird when that happened. It felt very weird. Versus
in the comic where he understands what's at stake if he keeps going. Where he's like, oh, I'm trying to form a family here, and I'm also trying to prove to the Illuminati that I can actually think things through and not just punch until someone's dead or I destroy things. That isn't at top of mind in that scene in this movie, whereas in the comic, it's a similar way things play out. I understand, like, oh yeah, of course he's going to stop right now. He's not going to keep going.
Yeah, see,
and it doesn't feel like it doesn't even feel like a sudden thing. You're just like, yeah, man, look, this is what you guys have been talking, because they really lean on the whole Warbound thing in the comic. I don't even know if it's by that point, but in the comic, there's this whole thing of like, listen, we're in this together. This is what's happening. We can't screw each other over. We're Warbound until we finish this thing. So top of mind is always, they're not going to do something that screws someone else over. Like, if he's going to ruin their chance at freedom, he's not going to do that. But also, that underneath all that is still him being like, I'm not a monster. Like, they keep treating me like a monster, and I'm going to show I'm not a monster.
Yeah. See, everything you just said, in its nuance, in its understanding of the characters, that makes sense to me. What they show us in this movie is just, oh, he's got full control over himself. He just chooses to go into a blind rage, and he could get snapped out of it by just a little bit of reasoning. And I'm just like, that is heavily inconsistent with what Tony Stark made. And you're probably right about Reed being the one that voices him and all that, that says that to him in the recording in the beginning. But I'm just like, these are two different characters, and basically, to me, it just makes me doubt the Illuminati and whether or not they were that smart. I'm just like, no, it just seems like you were finding the most convenient option to get rid
in the
of
comics, they were tricked into doing it. Like, they didn't, like, I don't remember.
And that's interesting.
Andrew has the actual way. Just listen to that episode if you want to know, like, what. I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to the listeners. I'm not going to remember what he said, but he gives the, like, background. So yeah, they are made to look silly, but also I feel like, I guess this still makes them look silly. They didn't account for the wormhole because they weren't trying to send him to Sakaar. But I feel like this movie makes it seem like it's because the Hulk got angry and he knocked things off course.
Yes.
But it doesn't feel that way in the comic. In the comic, it's just like he's listening to the message, getting angry while he's getting shot out into the wormhole. And so there's this element. I really, because I learned from Andrew that the introduction of Amadeus Cho is in Planet Hulk, because I read this issue in between issues where Amadeus Cho is making Reed Richards look really dumb by being like, hey, I found your special place. I'm also in contact with Hulk. He's coming back. You're going to really regret what you did to him when he comes. And all of that is stuff making me like, I can't wait to see what happens next. Like, this movie, I was just like, I don't know, I guess what? They're going to just defeat the bad guy and that's it. The other thing is with the spikes. So basically, yeah, they have the Hulk. So they beat everyone up in the Gladiator arena. They don't spend as much time. I mean, percentage wise, there's way more time spent in the arena in the movie than in the comic.
Sure.
I'm sure it plays out the exact same way. It's just obviously the comic has more to offer. And so they get out, and the big thing is, I think her name's Eloise. She's one of the Sicarians. They call them puny pinkies in the comic.
Oh, yeah,
they don't
yeah.
use that here. They're basically like, hey, like I can go to my parents because we've been resisting the Red King the whole time. And I didn't really care about her character in the comic until she gets home and is like, oh, my parents are working for the bad guy. Like, oh fuck. It's like, I was out there in the Coliseum and they're like, oh, like what's there's an option for me to be like, oh, maybe her parents were like, if we work on this, we can get our daughter back. But I feel like everyone in the group, including Hulk, are met with these crossroads of like, oh fuck, what I thought was happening isn't. They also just completely took a character out that I really liked called the Brood, or she's part of a brood, and maybe they thought it's too similar to Meek, but they play off each other well in the comics as well. And I think she has to sacrifice herself, but Meek throughout is constantly like, is the most consistent in being like, yeah, we got to trust the Hulk. It's the Hulk. He has all sorts of nicknames for him. And so you see this kind of little brother thing of him looking at how Hulk deals with things like beating up Beta Ray Bill or other things. And throughout, they keep getting met with the Red King's army and being like, oh, they did this to me or they did that to me. And Hulk being like, then fucking kill them. Why are we even? And yeah, that moment of me being like, yeah, let's do that. And other characters being like, I don't know. Seems like I don't know if that's going to help us. Is interesting, more interesting to have that where the friction isn't, I'm the leader. No, I'm the leader. No, I'm not saying that happens in this, but the friction is more, how are you bouncing off of these people as you all have the same goal, which is to break out of this and stop the Red King's terror. Also, I feel like they touch on it, but what's her name, Kara or Sierra?
Calera?
I don't know.
Because there's an L in there, so...
Well, I only see an I. Caiera.
Is that an I or an... Okay, well, yeah, let's go with... oh, yeah, it is an I.
she's the second in command for the Red King. I can see them cutting it down in a movie, but you keep seeing this tension mount between Hulk and her, and how she starts to respect him because he's not willing to back down on, like, no, I'm going to stop that Red King. As we saw other characters be like, well, maybe if I work within the system, I can stop him. He's like, I'm just going to get you. I'm going to kill you. Yeah. She has this thing, and there's those aliens called the Spikes, which in the movie don't have anything, but in the comic are actively like, we got sent here by the Red King, and we're gonna die. Like, we need to do this thing where we feed on people. Like,
oh shit! So they actually
can you just help us?
It's not
like,
just
you need to help us because we don't want to be here. It's kind of like the Starro, not the exact same, but like the Starro thing of like, we were out in the sky having a good time. He brought us down here, and now we can't feed the way we need to. And so that is more what turns Kara, or I don't know how to say her name, the second in command. She's like, so the things that killed my family, and I know in the movie he's like, oh yeah, I did that, but it's more that she on her own works out like, oh, you're fucked that you did that. You knew that was something that killed my family, and you brought it down here, and you didn't care what happened. I thought you were actually trying to do the right thing, and I feel like that character feels a lot more honorable in a good way. Yes. Where you like, for a lot of the comic, like, it is too bad that she doesn't just work with the Hulk because
Mhm.
she's not blindly following this thing. She actually thinks she's helping liberate people.
Right.
Whereas this movie flattens it, which I guess they have to if they want to do it in 80 minutes. But it's so much more interesting having it be like, oh wow, like she's starting to respect the Hulk and understand that she's on the wrong side of this.
Right.
And then they get married and have a kid. Like there's a whole thing there that they don't have time for.
Right.
In this runtime, but they could have put in because I think a lot of people got angry, but that ends up being Scar, who was in She-Hulk.
Sure.
Like to cut that out seems weird.
Yeah.
Of the movie. But also the ship that Hulk came in, they start working on it, and they're starting like, oh, like maybe we can get it to work again, and then it explodes and kills Kara.
Oh.
And so you're like, it's Hulk being like, oh, I'm gonna fuck these people up. I can't believe they did this, because he's finally found his family, his peace, and then it gets taken away from him. Do I give the movie points for taking out a fridging? Sure, but they're taking away this thing that makes me be like, oh, I want to see what happens next.
It's
and
so weird.
Fundamentally changes the story. That
Yes.
It's not just this happy ending. It's like, right, like he won't find this peace.
Mm-hmm. It's okay. What you just described blew my mind, because I was just like, when I watched it, I'm like, this can't be right. Like, this is too easy in the sense where I'm like, in that third act with the Red King and all that kind of stuff through hologram, just being like, yeah, I did this, and I'm like, why would you do that? Like, why would you even say that? Why wouldn't you just continue to manipulate her and do your thing and just be a shitty colonizer and all that kind of stuff? Because that's consistent with your character. Why would you all of a sudden now be like, oh yeah, I'm responsible for that. I needed to find, and I forget what the term is, but basically their chosen one where she was immune to the Sakarsson and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, this is dumb. Like, I hated that part of it, and this watch through left me very uneasy, because I'm just like, I am really hoping to pick your brain about this, because this can't be right.
Also, it's Meek that blows the thing up to keep Hulk like basically around.
Oh, the ship.
That's the like
that's the
secret bad guy. Like yeah, it's I understand that they might not think they're going to get a second bite at the apple and do World War Hulk. Maybe they did. I don't know. But they end it in a way where I'm like, I can't imagine that fans of the comic like that you end it like this.
Yeah, I can't imagine that either, because when it ended, I was just like, yeah, Hulk's raising a lot of good points right now in the sense that he should not be leader and all that kind of stuff. And it's just
that's the thing. He's like, I don't want this. I just want off. Like I want out of this, and that's why they have to keep bringing up. No, we're warbound. Like we are a family now, and so you have that issue where before he's like, why do the Avengers keep pushing me away? But then he's found people who are like, we want you around. Like we are trying to hold on to you, not push you away.
Yeah.
And so having that contrast is interesting to read as you see him like work through his feelings. But also there are people, the gray guy that's like just around kind of is way more interesting in the comic. The one that was like, oh, I don't believe in the Sakarsson, like that's not going to happen. And then they do it in the movie just at weird times. But yeah, like Hulk's blood actually makes things grow on Sakaar. Yes. And so there's just a trail of people like throughout the story being like, I mean, look, he's legitimately doing what we think the Sakarsson's going to do. Right. And then he takes a more active role in helping out by that conversation with the spikes and being like, oh, just feed off of me then. So they stop feeding off of all the different people, and it's not like a zombie story anymore. It's like he's taking his strength to help people instead of smash something. He's like, hey, you can just feed off of me, I won't die. And then they are able to fix the ship and get the spikes off of the planet.
That's way more interesting, because the spikes just seem like it's a virus the way they make it here, and I'm just like, okay, well,
it's like these are like our young, like I don't remember the exact You'd think I
Right.
would remember it. It's only been like 3 weeks since I read it. But like in general, I think the idea is like this. If it's not this, it's something like this.
Sure.
These are our young ones. Like they need to feed, and we don't have the resources to feed them, so we're feeding off of the people on this planet. But we didn't want to be here. We are basically grounded here, and we need help. And that's when Hulk. They show it in the movie where he just takes them on, but it's used as like this feat or something, as opposed to in the comic where you're like, this is a calculated thing he's doing to save two sets of people. Like he wants to save the Spikes and he wants to save the people around, as opposed to just they're on me. Oh my goodness! In the movie, and then he's able to beat them, and I'm like, that's why I said it feels like a fundamental difference in approach to the story. That where that feels like him showing, see how my strength can be used to not be a monster and save the day. Whereas this one was like, yeah, I'm just so strong, I can just withstand anything. I'm the strongest. I'm the best.
Yeah, and it's weird too, because I'm just like, I had never really seen a situation or remembered the fact that I'm like, oh yeah, he bleeds in this one. Like I don't remember a lot of situations where he actually bleeds and is impacted by the weapons and all that kind of stuff. So I was just like, oh, they're establishing scale in the sense that he can actually be hurt here. I don't remember that happening on Earth and all that kind of stuff. He just got angrier, but he legitimately can get hurt here. And I'm just like, oh, this is kind of interesting, where he's in a place where strength-wise, there's a lot more people equal to him. But then they get to the gladiator stuff. I'm like, no, there's no one equal to him.
Like, yes, the Red King has his suit, but even throughout, you are like, fuck, he keeps getting the Hulk. Like, I don't feel they nail that as best as they could. It feels like they have one round of a fight and it's very obvious, like, oh, Hulk underestimated him, got beat by the robot, basically only gets the one drop of blood type thing. But then it feels like they have multiple attempts on him and they keep getting outmaneuvered, whereas that doesn't feel like it happens here. And maybe that's for the best, but it just felt like they were not leaning into the story. It did feel like they were like, we would just get this over with.
Yeah, it's definitely some weird choices, knowing the comic accurate stuff of this. I'd be really upset if I really loved the Planet Hulk comic book run and I saw this. I'd be legitimately, like, I didn't even read the comic book run and I'm upset based on what you're describing, because what you're describing is so much more nuanced. It is so much more psychological, and it's legitimately looking at the idea of redemption as being earned as opposed to being served, because Hulk's redemption here is just basically served to him by, like you said, punching and kicking and all that kind of stuff, versus the other one is like, no, there is obviously that, but the exploration of, oh shit, I got rejected by my previous family, this family wants me, how do I not screw that up? I think that's legitimately very, very interesting.
All of that is very, because I'm not really that into Hulk, but
sure,
what worked was that you were able to hear his thoughts. As I said, yes, he's the lead, so you just hear his thoughts the way it's written, but he's also speaking to people, so you get more of that as well.
Yeah.
And it, as you said, there's that element of, I don't want to screw this up. So you can read a lot of what he does of pushing people away as, I'm not looking to get rejected again, or you're going to find out what I'm really like and not like me. I don't think there's room for that in this movie, and I feel like it suffers because of it.
I very much agree with you on that, because especially with what you're describing with the Meek subplot or storyline, I'm just like, yeah, see, that's interesting, is the idea of, and this is just me fresh off watching the Louis Theroux Inside the Manosphere documentary on Netflix. I'm like, yeah, that's very much a situation where you can read the Hulk as one of those toxic influencer guys, and then Meek being one of the like the guys that just buys into the red pill aspect of everything. Like,
and then he gets angry at the Hulk when the Hulk's like, no, you got to spare this person. He's like, no, fuck you. You said, like, don't, because he has this whole thing of like, this this army like killed my family.
Right.
I'm not down to just let that go.
Mm-hmm.
You told me not to let it go, and I'm not going to let it go. Why are you stopping me now?
Yeah.
It's just interesting. It's whether or not I would be like, oh, I want to read every Hulk story. In that moment, I am engaged and interested to see how it progresses.
Mm-hmm. And this is my fault, just because the few Hulk stories and movies that we have that I've seen, which is limited. It's not that much. I should read them. That's evidently the case that is being presented to me right now. It's just the Hulk is not that interesting of a character, and more of a character that's always, from the movies especially, made me feel like, oh, his anger is the responsibility of women to solve. And because it's always like Betty Ross, it's always like freaking Natasha Romanoff and all that kind of stuff. It's the idea of like, oh, women are the ones that have to calm him down, as opposed to him taking responsibility for that action himself until he turns Professor Hulk in the latter stuff.
Endgame, yeah.
In Endgame, yeah. But it that's why, to me, the Hulk has never been interesting, because I'm just like, oh, it's just an allegory for male rage and the need of a feminine presence in his life to do that. So I'm just like, at this point in my life, I'm like, that's not a good story, because that just excuses emotional immaturity and needing a woman to actually take care of that, as opposed to him taking care of that himself. And that has never been interesting to me. But what you just described, I'm like, oh no, that's interesting to me. Because then we have someone that's been obviously traumatized, that has outbursts, that has managed to alienate people around him because he's embarrassed about those outbursts, he's ashamed of it, and he's not able to communicate properly, and, alienates himself, and then gets that confirmation that, hey, the Illuminati have kicked you off of Earth and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and
like you wake up. I see how MCU tried to match that arc, or not even match, but at least allude to it, where only obviously he self-exiles in Age of Ultron.
Correct.
But it's like the same idea that he's sent off planet, and like you said, there's you don't have to worry about, oh, how's a woman going to calm him down. That's not really what we're dealing with here. He is just so in his head, because it's comic. That's usually how comics work. I feel like you're getting the internal monologue, but it is a perfect medium to explore that. And so then when you bring it into the movie, I feel like it is important to then lean into the connections he has with all those different characters, so that you can at least get it, if not explicitly stated, you have room to infer certain things based on how he's interacting with these characters. With the Illuminati scene at the beginning, it is good to start with that, so that it can feel more like it's informing his decisions.
Yes.
But I also, like, in the comic, I know we're just talking about the comic now, but that there's an issue where Bruce tries to come back, and I was like, I didn't even miss this guy. Not again, I'm not a Hulk fan, but I was just like, oh, this is great. How he's just like, hey, fuck off, man. I don't need you. I don't need that. That's not what I'm looking for. And Bruce is just like, you're gonna fuck this up. Don't kid yourself. This is not gonna go well for you. Again, very interesting, because of when that issue appears in the storyline, that you are like, yeah, he doubts himself. It's not just these external instances of him being like, well, yeah, they did reject me, or he already just on a base level doesn't trust himself.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a shame that the movie doesn't do that. I mean, maybe I'd rewatch it and feel differently, but watching it, and I feel like I had enough distance between reading the comic and watching this to be like, I just don't feel like they're honoring what the comic was trying to get at.
You're absolutely right. It doesn't feel like that whatsoever. And I think this is the one thing that works really, really well in comic book or in writing is the idea that you can have the internal dialogue not be done in a cheesy way. Because if there was voiceover from Hulk's thoughts and all that kind of stuff explaining all this, then I run into the issue of like, great, you're telling me, you're not showing me. But at the same time, too, it's just like, okay, so what you're also showing me is that his internal thoughts are a lot more complex than he's able to grunt out and all that kind of stuff, which I can really truly understand how frustrating and how angry that is. Like the idea,
I feel like should have done that in the movie.
Yes, because I think one of the biggest things, I forget which piece of media this is. Oh, this is in Modern Family, not a show that I absolutely love, but I think that there's this one point where Gloria goes to Jay and he's like, you don't even know how funny I am in Spanish and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, yes, that must be so frustrating that your mother tongue
100%.
is not matching your adopted language and all that kind of stuff. And I see that a lot in immigrants and people where English is just not their first language, where they're struggling to find the right word because English is just so radically different than where they come from, that that is a point of frustration. That if Hulk has the ability to have those inner thoughts, but can only go like, it's just like, yeah, that would be frustrating. I would understand that a lot more. But again, it would be telling me, not showing me. And I think is a very difficult thing.
I feel like that would work only because of the comic, that's not an issue. So it would show that you're adapting because it's a different medium. And then it doesn't feel as much like you're just using narration as a shortcut.
Sure.
It would feel, in the context of knowing about the original text, that you are doing a different version of showing his frustration, but at least showing a frustration. Beyond, that's the Hulk, he's just angry. Like, yeah, he's gonna Hulk out if he's angry. Because in the comic, it is still like stated many times, like, like if you make me angry, it's just gonna make me stronger. Like that hasn't left, but we already know that his frustration is deeper than just, oh, you're annoying me by fighting me or putting me on this planet.
Right.
It's just him remembering all these times where he was like, and then they just started fighting me as if I'm not one of them, or I'm not trying to help to get the same thing accomplished. Which I guess really spoke to me. I'd never thought of it in those ways before. This comic of how he would feel when they start turning on him, when he's like, "The fuck are you guys doing? Like, are we not on the same team? Are we not the Avengers?"
Yeah. It is one of those things that is, and I've been in that position where I, like a younger version of myself, identifying like, and this is me identifying with the Hulk's frustration of like, I've done so much for you, and yes, I've screwed up here, but like clearly what y'all are doing right now is a PR move instead of actually trying to understand where I'm coming from and all this kind of stuff. So it makes you feel disposable. It makes you feel like nothing and just a castaway. And like, I can, based on what you and I are now having a conversation with, I can very much understand Hulk's motivations, because when you're cast away from a certain group and there's another group that's like, no, we see past that, we love you, and all this kind of stuff, there is always that second guessing of, I don't want to screw this up. So am I still being me, or am I being a version of myself that is
I can't keep up,
promoted by exactly, I can't keep up with these appearances and these things because it's not genuinely who I am. Like, is this motivated by a different kind of fear versus the idea of like, oh, was I kicked away or was I cast away because I was too much myself? You know what I mean? Those are very, very, I think, complex thoughts that if you don't have the right guidance, then you can't really figure those things out. And in Hulk's situation, he definitely doesn't have the right guidance for any of that. He's just like, everyone's just like, yeah, you do this and we gotta get rid of you.
There's it's not part of the run proper, but it's like there's an annual that comes out that splits two stories, and one of the stories is related to the theme of Planet Hulk, where the Avengers are trying to stop the Hulk while he's trying to go to a hospital, and they're like, and it's just doubling down on that idea of look how they're treating him, and then you find out at the end of the story he was going to save somebody, like
right.
he was on his way to save someone, and was just like, I don't need to talk about it, just get out of my way, I need to go, and they're like, no, we're gonna stop you here, I think that one's more Iron Man led, of like, no, you need, what are you up to, what are you doing? And then someone else tells the Avengers, like, see, but did you know what he was up to? Like, you know that you stopped him from saving like more people than he could have, because you assumed he was a problem instead of just trying to do the same thing you guys do.
Right.
And so obviously it is said out loud in that story, but it's still a part of what is happening in the proper Planet Hulk story. And I wish they had that top of mind in that, because as we keep saying, it truly helps illustrate what's going on in his mind.
Right. And you know, it's so important that Iron Man is brought into this discussion, because it's just like, hey, man, let's not forget that you and your family used to produce like so many weapons that caused so much destruction globally, and you did it for profit and you did it for business and all that kind of shit. Now it's like you PR'd yourself and like all's forgiven. It's like the Merchant of Death is what Leslie Bibb's character calls Iron Man in Iron Man 1, and I'm just like, yeah, that's how are you going to rehab yourself out of that? And it's just one of those things where I'm like,
that's what I like about Tony Stark in the MCU, is that he's aware of that hypocrisy. So he's making choices out of the fear that people will always just think of him as the Merchant of Death.
Right.
And so that makes it more interesting, which I don't think is a part of the comics. It's
definitely less so from what all the Iron Man stories that I've read. It's just like, he's just like, hey, I get to be spotlight's on me, I get to be the playboy now, and I get to be the PR piece and all that kind of stuff. They still love me, and they forgot all about the death monger stuff and all that. And I'm just like, that's what I like about the like you said, that's what I like about the MCU, Tony Stark, and it is so good that they see it that way. But in the comics, I'm like, they never see it that way. Even with the Demon and Bottle storyline and all that kind of stuff, I'm just like, yeah, well, they're exploring something dark right now, but it's just like, it, you know, what's going on here? The Merchant of Death line again is just like, that needs to be more top of mind with a character like Iron Man, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say we can kind of get into breaking down some of the other characters. I feel Korg is a big one. I appreciated, for whatever reason, because of Korg's role in the story and the movie, I was like, whatever, might as well just do whatever Taika Waititi did, make it more interesting. I still think that there's room for people like, why the fuck would they do this to Korg? But I was just like, nah, this is fine. I appreciate the role he serves in the comic and this movie, but in Ragnarok, I'm like, yeah, what? Go ahead. It was really, and I'll get to Meek later, but it was really Meek where I was like, why did they do this to such an interesting character?
Right.
But anyway, for Korg, he really is just supposed to be kind of like Hero-M as well, but because Korg is more in the movie version, I feel like Hero-M is just out the gate, kind of like, yeah, this is what my deal is. Versus in the comic, they have to coax it out of him. Like, there's an element of Hulk needing to prove, not that he knows he's doing that, but needing to prove that he's worthy of Hero-M opening up and actually talking.
Sure. Which
makes Hero-M just a instantly way more interesting character. He's the gray guy.
Yep.
Just, he's so much more interesting in the comic, because I'm just like, yeah, what's this guy's deal? Like, I bet he's gonna do something sick whenever and then he does do something sick. Like, but in this, I'm just kind of like, I think they're just trying to speed run him being like, yeah. I'm kind of the laughing stock of my ilk of people who protect this place. But it just, for whatever reason, to me, came off as like, and then this, and this. You get the idea. Versus in the comic where you're like, oh shit, like that's why he's not talking. There's this whole embarrassment of he talked too much before and was ousted, and now he's opening up because he's like, oh, I'm around people I could probably actually communicate with. Yeah, so it's just weird to flatten him, but it worked because Korg throughout is just like, nope, I can lead you guys, and he's not trying to do it out of I'm the most strong, I'm the best. He's just like, okay, I can see we need to work together, so I'm gonna facilitate that however I can. And so you're just like, yeah, he's just the decent guy in the group that's going to get things started and keep them on track if things threaten to get off track, like when he stops Hulk. But you aren't like, I mean, he does have the tragic backstory of like, I'm a Cronin and I have to fight other Cronin.
Mm-hmm.
Again, just feels better in the comic, but I'll give them that it pretty much plays out like that in the comic.
Right.
It's just more, I got to read it at my own pace.
Yeah. Korg's story felt complete to me.
Yes.
Hero M is definitely a very interesting character because I'm just like, you just seem to say the right thing at the right time all the time. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, but like, I feel it's earned in the comic. In this, he's just talking basically right away, and so you were just like, okay, so we just did 2 Korgs basically,
right?
Versus in the comic where there is an element of some people being like, this guy sucks, and other people being like, I mean, he's made it this far with us, and we're all warbound. We got to just respect him. Mm-hmm. And then he feels comfortable opening up and is a big, like Meek, but not in a dangerous way, champion for Hulk.
The other thing that I'm liking a lot more of what you're saying is the fact that Warbound seems to be a point of discussion between this team of people,
yes,
as opposed
they have to discuss it.
Yes, as opposed to here, where it just comes up in one scene where it's just like, oh yeah, you beat my 3 tests and all this kind of stuff. It's like, you're free to go if you pass this final one, which is kill the woman that you've all been friends with. Which is I'm just like, and then Meek, I think it says, like, he goes like, oh no, we're warbound. What he does, like, we follow and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, is that something you just applied in that moment? So it's nice to hear that in the comic. That it's
in
like,
the comic,
no,
it's like this fireside chat,
discussion.
And it's not a one-time thing. Like, they have to keep revisiting it and what that means.
Right.
Yeah, this movie, as I said, just felt like they were trying to speed run stuff. But yeah, the Meek thing, I guess I've talked about already, but it felt weird because it was such a easy way to highlight what Hulk's issue is without having there be too much narration about it, which is, I don't want to come off like a monster. Oh shit, I'm turning this guy into a monster. And to lean into that would be a great way to get past all of the other not limitations, but restraints that come. I guess that sounds like the same thing. What I'm saying is, it's a different medium than writing, as you pointed out. You can get away with a lot more narration in writing.
Right.
With a movie, I think you kind of you maybe can ask people to just buy into it, but I feel like it then becomes something people don't really pay attention to for a sustained period of times.
Yeah, or they pay attention to way too much, like in Rorschach and Watchmen and all that kind of stuff. Like all the narration. I would argue people aren't
paying attention. If that's
people
because they think he's cool.
So here's the thing about the Rorschach thing is just like, people love the narration, but I'm like, you're not listening to him though.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They're not paying attention.
Yeah, they're just like, you like the fact that you think
bites.
He looks cool, and the sound bites and the very quotable lines, but I'm like, yeah, you put it all together, that guy's a freaking monster. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, he sucks. I am interested by that character, but not because I think he is an aspirational character.
Correct. He's a very interesting, psychologically complex character, which I really, really appreciate. But at the end of the day, I'm just like, oh, no, he is the type of man that would have a manifesto and, like, would do shit up. And that's the point that the thing's trying to make. But, yeah, I deviated from this.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's the point stands, right? Like, you risk a lot depending on narration.
Correct.
In that way. So, as I said earlier, why not lean into the different relationships he has? And the Meek one felt like the easiest way to illustrate what's going on.
Right.
And that there are just things along the way where you're like, hey, good for Meek. He gained the respect of his colony. He leveled up. I don't know any better way of saying it. He just like transforms and literally becomes bigger and more capable through the process. So you do have this element of he is physically being changed by this experience.
Right. A literal Pokemon evolution.
Exactly. I guess I could have said that too. But yeah, I really connected with Meek throughout the comic, and I feel like a lot of goodwill from the comic floats the movie version of it. When I say movie, this movie that we're talking about, not Ragnarok.
Right. Not right.
But it does leave me being like, I wish there was more to this.
Yeah, and genuinely, like, I think everything that you're describing with Meek's character is genuinely interesting, and it's just because, like I said before, I'm just so interested in the thought process behind Manosphere kind of red pill stuff, and that to me is something I immediately saw based on what you said. Is just like, oh yeah, okay, like Hulk negatively influencing Meek, and then being like, oh, I'm horrified that he's picking up on the parts of me that I'm ashamed of, and all that kind of stuff. In the Manosphere, they obviously just monetize.
No, they don't care about that.
but it that's not the case here. But this would be genuinely interesting to explore had they done a little bit more service closer to the actual comic. And it's disappointing that they didn't. I didn't think too much of it, but I think a lot less of it now.
Yeah, it is a shame, but yeah, I was very taken aback at where they chose to end it, in a world where I don't know if they would have thought they couldn't just do a straight, like, it's already straight to DVD. Why not do a sequel?
Sure.
I feel like Planet Hulk and World War Hulk are so hand in hand that you would go into this endeavor assuming you're going to do World War Hulk, which I haven't read yet. I still want to read, but yeah, it felt very weird.
It feels weird because it's just like, and this is why I think Hulk stories for me are fundamentally difficult, because this is a situation where I'm like, is this the influence of basically the North American version of what a movie has to be, where it's like a clear winner and a clear loser and all that kind of stuff, versus in comic book I'm like, no, it's a lot more complicated, because the idea is that the story just keeps going like in real life, right? There's no definitive end. It's just like, from a movie standpoint, yeah, it's got to end, but from a comic book standpoint, which is much more reflective of real life, it's like, no, we're going to keep going, we're going to keep telling the stories and seeing how issue 1 from this series impacts issue 217 and all that kind of stuff, with these small little nuances, and it rewards you like that. I can't see how they can achieve that in an 80-minute runtime to the same degree, but that's the thing that bothers me a lot more about this, is the idea of, like, this is animated, so you have the option of making this 2 hours. Why are you not taking that option? It bothers me very, very much.
The actors in this, but I don't see anyone that's like chewing up budget, really.
Yes.
Like Kevin Michael Richardson, maybe.
Yep.
I don't.
For the voice of Korg, for sure.
Yeah, I don't really.
But you're right. I don't see.
It just feels like you could have gone into. I think what I'm also confused by is, who is this for if not people that just want to see the comic? It's not like they were doing, we're doing another Hulk movie in theaters, so we need everyone to like this. We need to make sure that we flatten this so that everyone has an entry point. This feels like you're only doing it to appease people that are like, I always wanted to see this in motion.
I very much agree with you on that. because that to me is like the whole premise of the animated movie side of things, is like you are staying true. Were my thoughts are that you're hopefully staying truer to the comics and trying to change it for a PG-13 audience. You know what I mean? To sell more tickets and sell at the matinees.
Yeah, like they're not selling
tickets
tickets here. I get that they have to sell physical copies of something, but I don't know what the budget is on this, where they think they're not going to hit the target. Anyway, it really feels like, why do it if you're not going to honor? As I said, I'm not saying just animate the panels from the comic,
right?
They take out things that show what I feel like Greg Pak was trying to get at when he wrote the original thing, and maybe they don't care about what he wanted to do, and they just wanted to do a popular Hulk thing. But that's a bummer if that's the case.
That is a bummer. That's a very, very big bummer, because I'm just like, no, man, this is, if you like Hulk enough to make it its own movie, then you should like Hulk enough to stay true to the original thing. And if you're going to change it, if you're going to change it, I would love to know that they changed it for the better, not to make it more simple.
Yeah.
You know, if there's something that Hulk glaringly does wrong, where it's like, oh, he just hits a woman right away for no reason, they took that out, I'm like, I could understand that. But this is a situation where I'm like, no, they just are really not interested in exploring the Hulk's character very, very much, and just being like, oh yeah, he's using these people to a means to an end to get away from the gladiator stuff, and then just socially isolate himself and all that kind of stuff.
And I know this is different because it's a TV show, but I feel like Invincible does a good job of being like, we're still getting to the point of what the original was, but we don't have to do everything that's like cringeworthy now.
Right.
We can change things so that it's palatable to more people, instead of just like teenage boys or early 20 boys. Yeah. We can make this a little bit more accessible to people. I shouldn't say accessible. We can, palatable is what I meant to say. I would say for the most part, they make changes that make it better.
Right.
For Invincible. And I understand they probably feel a bit more empowered to do that because they're like, we're at least going to get 2 seasons or another season.
Sure.
So it's different, but I don't get the business model here. Like, surely you'd go into this being like, we'll just do both.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right about that, especially because, again, to your point, no shade on these voice actors, but I'm just like, this looks like a very affordable budget based on voice acting and all that kind of stuff, and I don't know how much it costs to animate, like all that kind of stuff, but it's this weird obsession with trying to stay under 90 that, to me, is a thing that makes sense when you're trying to do theater turnover for seats and all that kind of stuff. But for this, I'm like, no, go the full 2 hours, give us nuance, give us that complexity, and just do that kind of stuff. Like, I understand why, if in the comics, like that change around, like you said in the beginning with the Illuminati, where Iron Man's a little bit more forward talking instead of Mr. Fantastic, like, I can understand why they would make that change. It would make sense given the popularity of Iron Man and Iron Man 2 and where the MCU was kicking off for.
And it's a change that doesn't affect the point. The point is the Illuminati chose to take him off Earth.
Correct, yeah. And it doesn't change these fundamental beats that you're bringing to this recording right now, because fundamentally this is a totally different thing, and it's too simplified, and I don't like it, based on knowing that it could have been a lot more complex, knowing that the Spikes were an alien race that were also colonized and used against as an army, like that kind of stuff. I'm just like, all of that is interesting, and the whole idea of the Red King to Kaera, having Kaera figure that out, as opposed to Red King just like evil monologuing it. It's just, it does Kaera such a disservice in that, because I'm just like, I know you're gonna turn, I know that you're gonna figure this out, but do I know that? Because he just gave it away in the dumbest fashion possible. Because
right, like you don't know if she was actually going to get there. You
right.
Because they take that away from her by having him say it out loud.
Exactly. She didn't put the pieces together, nothing like that. It's not empowering, and it's just like purely out of rage and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so that sucks.
The care part definitely was a bummer. Mm-hmm. Not because I wanted to see her die after she gives birth,
right?
Because before that, I found her to be such an interesting character, and she doesn't get to be in this.
Yeah, there's so many interesting aspects of just that dynamic alone, of like, you have a colonizer that has adopted one of the natives for basically a blood sport purpose and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's interesting stuff to explore within that, right? Especially because I'm like, when did the movie Gladiator come out?
2000.
Okay, so then, because obviously this is very Gladiator coded in that
it's like
sense.
Spartacus Gladiator, yeah,
very much so. So it's just like, okay, well, explore that, give us a little bit more flavor, as opposed to being just like Hulk is Marcus Aurelius in this, but really not, because he doesn't have that complex backstory of being a previous general and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you do still have he's a fallen hero, but
yes,
they're not really doing much to explore how he feels about not just the situation in front of him, but his role in other people's lives.
Yeah. I will say, though, I completely forgot about Beta Ray Bill in this, and I was just like, that Easter egg in Ragnarok, I'm like, oh yeah, that does make a lot more sense now. It's a messy
that he
Easter
fought
egg
in that Colosseum because he's on the thing. Yeah,
it's a messy Easter egg, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is a visual one. I guess it's not that big a deal, because people that like Planet Hulk, I think, should be more upset at this than the minor plot points that they did in Ragnarok.
I mean, if someone was mad at Ragnarok for not giving Planet Hulk its due, I'd have to kind of look at them weird, because I'm like,
I'm like,
you thought in Thor Ragnarok they were actually going to do full on Planet Hulk? They don't even do full on anything in any of these movies. They're telling their own stories. I'm not saying that as a knock. I'm saying they're actually just doing their own thing in the MCU. So
no, I very much
you
agree
just be
with
happy
you on
that they put him in the armor or something.
Yeah, I'm very much in agreement with you on that. And if someone were to be like, oh, they adopted this story angle wrong, I'm like, we've had over a decade of the MCU, and they've never done anything to the T. And that, because that's not the point of the MCU. So why are you nitpicking at this to get this upset when you've had 10 years worth of evidence, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, just throwing a hissy fit over? I'm like, no, you're just not paying attention.
Yeah. I wish I liked this more, because I was taken aback at how much I enjoyed reading the comic, and how I genuinely at the end, it was like, I have to read the next thing. Granted, I haven't started yet because I'm working through some other comics, but I was like, I 100% need to read what happens next.
Sure.
It ended in a good place for that. Again, I don't love that there's fridging going on, but I didn't write it, so
yeah.
Is there anything else you want to talk about, or do you want to rate this?
We can rate it. I just, it's one of those weird things where, since you brought up the fridging, I'm like, what's worse, fridging or writing the character way worse? I can't tell, especially when we're talking about female
I'll give them points for not fridging her, but it feels like a weird thing to ask of, like, look, do you want a shit character, or do you want us to fridge her?
Right.
Like, why don't you just make a good character that doesn't get fridged then?
Yeah, just write a good female character. Like, what are you doing? Like, why does that have to be the option? It's just, don't do either. I don't want you to do either. But yeah, we can definitely rate this thing.
I'm gonna give it a 5. I came in way more positive, and then talking through it, I was just like, no, this is a 5 for me.
Yeah, I was originally at a 6.5 with this. It has dropped down to a 4.5.
There we go. Sorry if you like this movie. But here's your chance. Why don't you get in touch with us and let us know why you like this movie? We are at TDF Spoiled on Instagram, Threads, YouTube, TikTok, Lemonade. We have an email, spoiledpodcast@gmail.com, and you can go to tdferything.com/spoiledrotten and find other ways to get in touch with us. Also, why not go on your podcast platform of choice, rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, this podcast, of course, and do all that great stuff. Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.